how to use it, what to look for, and it'll assist assessors in determining the form of evidence required in a DEAP assessment. Our speaker today is Tom O'Flynn. You know him from our SEI auditing team. Tom has a background in civil engineering and has experience in managing many development aid projects abroad and various construction projects here in Ireland, and has consulted on the domestic auditing panel team since 2010. Today, our panelists are Antonella Uris, from our program manager with our NZAB and High Performance Retrofit at SEI, Patrick Gallagher, SEI auditor, BER auditor, and Marisha O'Neill from a technical support specialist at the BER Help Desk. Throughout this event has been recorded, so attendees will be muted and your cameras will be off at the time. You can submit a question by clicking on the Q&A bubble down on the bottom right. That question will come into the forum here. Some will be answered as we go along, and we have allotted some time at the end to answer some questions. Any questions not answered in this webinar, we will be presenting an FAQ, which will then be sent out to all assessors with a recording of the slides and also a link to the event recording here today. So without further ado, I will pass you over to Tom O'Flynn.
Hello there, and welcome to this BER documentary evidence webinar on certification. So the topics that we wish to cover today are certified data and laboratory accreditation. We're going to look at harmonized European standards, the EA and NANDO websites. We're also going to have a look at sources of certified data, the HARP and PCDB databases, test reports. We're going to have a look at CE marking, agreement certificates, and also agreement certification schemes, manufacturers' self-declared literature, heat pump data and ERP labels. We're also going to have a look at supporting evidence for certification, as-built plans and specifications. We're going to have a look at the implications for assessors with Brexit, and hopefully we'll get through all the audit examples there that are on the presentation. Now, certified data and laboratory accreditation. In this webinar on certification, we're going to explain the various sources of certified data available to assessors. The purpose of the presentation is to accommodate assessors of all levels of experience and knowledge. It is hoped that this webinar will help assessors' understanding of the evidence requirements and acceptable sources of certified data on building products to support DEAP inputs. So just have a look at harmonized European standards. They're abbreviated ENs, European norms, owing to the French-German translation. What are they? Technical specifications defining requirements for products, production processes, services, or test methods. They're voluntary, developed by industry and market actors. Standards ensure interoperability and safety, reduce costs, and facilitate companies' integration into the value chain and trade. They're basically one of the requirements for the single market. Now, European standards are drafted and maintained by CEN, European Committee for Standardization, CENELEC, European Committee for Electrotechnical Standardization, and the ETSE, European Telecommunication Standards Institute. Now, I just wanted to give you a note on notified bodies. They're going to come up in this presentation from time to time. This is a testing facility which has been accredited for testing to specific standards. All notified bodies have a specific reference number, and details of the notified body can be checked on the NANDO website. Now we're going to have a look at the NANDO website here in a little bit more detail. So on certified data, this is a quote actually from the manuals. For building products such as windows, doors, insulation, etc., we rely on certified data and test certificates. Agreement certificates, etc., are produced by an accredited body. The first basic requirement of any source of certified data as per the DEAP manual is that test certificates must be in English or be accompanied by a certified English translation. The translation can be from the accredited test house or from a professional translator listed by the Irish Translators and Interpreters Association or international equivalent. Now also, laboratories that produce these test certificates, they must be accredited. And there's two websites in the manual that we can check for these particular laboratories, and we can check whether they're accredited or not and for what they're accredited to. Now, of the two, the NANDO website is probably more useful than the EA, which is the European Accreditation Organization. But we'll have a look at both of them. We'll start with the EA website. Now, the European Cooperation for Accreditation, or EA, is an association of national accreditation bodies in Europe that are officially recognized by their national governments to assess and verify against that international standards. So to check for an accreditation body by clicking EA members, right? So you go onto a website, you click on EA members, and then the country comes up. Now, in this example here, I've just clicked on Ireland, and Irish National Accreditation Board comes up. So then click on Scopes, which is down there in the right-hand corner, which I've also circled, and then have a look at product certification. That brings you right into the INAB website, and you can then check for a laboratory in that particular website. I'm not a big fan of this particular website. I think it can be a little bit cumbersome. I think during the presentation, I've mainly referred to the NANDO website, which is the next one that we're going to have a quick look at here. So that's the new approach notified and designated organizations information system website. When searching this website for a test body, you can check by country or by notified body number. Okay, so just have a look there. I've checked by country there. That's the top, Ireland, right? Now I just had a look there, National Standards Authority of Ireland, NSAI, and there's the notified body number there, right? So if you have the notified body number, you click on body and a list of numbers appears. Click on the body number you require and the details of the test body is available. The alternative is to click country and choose from the list of countries which appears. Click on the country and a list of institutions appears per country. You can then search the required test body by name or by notified body number, which would be on the test certificate that you are looking at. So why would you look? You look for country if you know where the test. So the test certificate is issued by a testing body. You know where the testing body is, so you can check by country what standards that particular testing body is accredited for. Now, if you have the number, you can also check the number. So as explained earlier, the NB, or the notified body number, is a unique number assigned to each of the laboratories listed on NANDO. I've just, as I say, just clicked on the National Standards Authority of Ireland there, and that's the number that comes up in B0050. And the nice thing about that number, it's a unique number. There is no other number in Europe for a testing, an approved testing body that has that number. So it's unique to the National Standards Authority of Ireland. Now, just on sources of certified data. The one that we're all familiar with is the HARP and PCDB databases. Now, I won't dwell too much on the HARP database. As I say, everybody's fairly familiar with it, but there has been a change since the 1st of January this year for boilers that come on the market. For new boilers that have come on the market since the 1st of January this year, we're not allowed to use the PCDB database. That is probably the only change that has happened in the last couple of months, right? So for the PCD database, we're not allowed to use the data from it for gas and oil boilers that have come on the market since the 1st of January. Otherwise, for the HARP, there's no change. Continue to use it as normal. Now, other certification types, there's CE marking, Declaration of Performance and CE mark literature, test reports, air tests, windows, doors, etc. Agreement certificates, NSAI, National Standards Authority of Ireland, or the British Board Agreement. Certification schemes, thermal bridging modelers and air tightness testers. And then we're going to have a look at manufacturer self-declaration literature, heat pump, eco-design data, and ERP labels. Now, hopefully we'll have an example of each one of those to go through. So that'll make it easier to understand where we're going with this. Now, what is CE marking? When a company puts CE marking on their product, they're declaring that it fulfills the requirements of the relevant European product directives. They have checked and identified all the laws that apply to it. It conforms to all the applicable health, safety, and environmental laws. It is legally safe enough to sell everywhere in the European Economic Area. That's all the EU countries, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. It meets the requirements, and you can prove it with documentation. You can provide the EU authorities at their request with a legally correct and complete technical file that demonstrates conformity. You have given a legal assurance and you take full legal responsibility for any failings. So it's a legal guarantee, almost like a legal guarantee. And the main document that supports the CE mark is a document called the Declaration of Performance, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. Declarations of Performance are the most important document which supports the CE marking because it contains the full information about the manufacturer, the product, and its performance. It is defined under EU Construction Products Regulation 305/2011. and it came into force on the 1st of July 2013. So there's an example of a declaration of performance there. So a declaration of performance as used for CE marked products is acceptable for DEAP assessments provided the following requirements are met. The DOP must display the relevant standard for the product in question as referenced in the DEAP methodology. Okay, so in the DEAP methodology, we're talking about the DEAP manual. There's a list of standards in the DEAP manual, and that's the standard they're talking about there. So the DOP must show the relevant performance data for use in DEAP in sufficient detail for the data to be used in DEAP. Okay, if the above data is available on the DOP document, the product must have a CE mark referencing the DOP reference number being used. Okay, so the product must have a CE mark referencing the DOP reference number being used. The CE mark would typically be on the product itself, yeah, associated literature or product packaging. Okay, so it's a CE mark would typically be on the product itself. That might be a plate, yeah, associated literature, which could be a data sheet, and our product packaging. This DOP reference number on the CE mark literature label must match the DOP reference number on the DOP document being used, or else the DOP cannot be used. Yeah, a copy of the CE mark showing the DOP number along with a copy of the DOP itself must be retained by the assessor as supporting evidence. Okay, always keep that in mind. You need to keep that evidence to show if you're asked for it. Okay, if using a DOP document as supporting evidence for a BER, the above data suffices without the need to verify the DOP document follows the required format to the exact requirements of the regulation. Now, I've just taken an example of a DOP. It's for insulation. There are actually 7 different products on the certificate there, right? And they all have an additional, they all have an individual identificational code, right? So we have the address of the product and contact details, and also there's a harmonized standard is declared, the EN 13162. It also contains the testing body, okay, and then the testing body number there is 0751, okay. That's the unique testing body number that we kind of discussed earlier. You can then get more details on that testing body from the NANDO website. Okay. So this is the second page of the certificate. Now you'll notice there what we're interested in, this is insulation, so we're interested in the thermal conductivity, so we can establish the U value of a particular element that it's being installed in. Now the harmonized standard 13162 is still quoted there. Now you'll notice there that the numbers 39, 34, 31, they don't look like thermal conductivity values, but they're slightly different units, okay? So it's a milliwatt per meter Kelvin rather than a watt per meter Kelvin. So what we have to do there is divide it by 1,000 to get the number that we can enter as an input into the DEAP4 software, right? That's for example there, the METAC UF 040. So it's 0.039. Just one other thing I want you to note is that, and this happens a lot actually, this thermal conductivity value is for a specific depth of insulation. So if we go back to the METAC UF-40, it's 39 or 0.039, sorry, watts per meter Kelvin, but it's meter square Kelvin. It's actually for a depth between 25 and 260 millimeters. All right. Now this is the product label. This is actually on the insulation there. So it's CE marked. It has the product code on it. So we get the thermal conductivity there, 0.034. And then we have the actual standard is written on it there, 13162. So if I was looking at that and I would take a photograph of a label like that, that's very useful evidence to have to cover you for your DOP. Okay. Now, as it happens, the standard that's actually on this DOP is not a standard on DEAP, or should I say, it's not in the standard in the DEAP manual. Therefore, assessors can confirm if the EN standard is irrelevant to the test data we are interested in by cross-checking it using descriptions of the standards available on websites such as the British Standards Institute or the NSAI website. Now, both NSAI and the BSI, the British Standards Institute, they sell these standards, and you can check actually what a standard is about. You can check the contents by just pressing on the review button in these websites. Okay, so assessor is not expected to purchase the standard, as access to the standard description and contents page is free on these websites. You can actually download the contents page. So if you're looking at a standard, you say, well, it's not on the DEAP manual, can I use it? You can actually check it by punching in the number into, I'd say just say the NSAI website there, punch in the number, use the search facility. The standard will come up. The first thing it'll tell you whether it's current or not. And the second thing it'll tell you is the contents page. It'll show you the contents page, and you can check what's in that particular standard. Then you have the if it's relevant to what you're looking for, to the particular property of the item that you're looking for, then you can download that and keep it as backup to your decision to use that particular standard or to accept that particular certificate. So just to summarize, certificate not to a harmonized standard, not to a standard, not in DEAP. Use BSI or NSI websites to confirm standard is current, right, and relevant by checking the overview and preview pages. If it's not relevant, request more information from the manufacturer or use defaults. If it is relevant, you can enter the data in DEAP and keep standard summary in records. So you can just download the actual contents page and just keep it as part of your evidence. Okay. Now, as I said, I've just downloaded this just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so the standard description that's on for this particular standard is EN 13162, thermal insulation products for buildings, factory-made mineral wool specification. And in the contents page, which I've just downloaded, and you can see it there, it says the determination of declared values of thermal resistance and thermal conductivity is included in the standard. So therefore, we can use it. We can use it. And if you're not clear on it, or it's vague, you may have to ask for more information from the manufacturer, or you can ask the help desk. So these are the websites I've been talking to you about. They're the National Standards Authority of Ireland website there. So you just type in the standard number in the search box, and press the search button and just click preview, and you can have a look at what the contents are like. And the same with the BSI website. It's a similar kind of you can get a preview or an overview of the standard. The SEN would be a last resort. It's not as user-friendly as the top two. It also sells standards, but I'd go for the top two there before using the SEN one, the European Committee for Standardization. Now, test reports. We're all familiar with test reports. There's 8 types of tests. Make sure test is completed in accordance with ISE and ISO 9972, and that the tester is accredited. Now, there's accredited schemes run by NSEI or INAB also accredit air tightness testers. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. The test report should include the address of the dwelling, the date of the pressure test, the floor area of the dwelling should match the area measured on site by the assessor. We have window test reports, should include the relevant test standards. The testing body is accredited for that particular standard, and both the U value and the solar transmittance data are provided. I've done an example here. It's actually a door certificate, which I received during an audit. And this door certificate, this is we're going to check the U value of this door. It's in English, so it passes the first test. The door was tested in France, manufactured in Greece, and is now being sold in Ireland. Okay, so CSTB, they're the actual crowd, the laboratory that tested with the notified body number, shall we call them. Okay, based in France. So how do we check this certificate is valid? Okay, the first thing is we can just check who manufactured the door. That's just the company here. They're the company based in Greece. What standards were used to check the U value of the door? Well, 1077 is one, and 7-1 and -2. We're very familiar with those standards. They're in the DEAP manual, so they're in the DEAP methodology. Okay. Now, as I said, the test institute is CSTB, so I have to check whether this test institute is accredited for those particular standards that we were looking at there. Okay, so I've checked by country because it happened on this particular certificate. I knew it was based in France, but they never gave us the number, which is 0679 as it turns out. Okay, so I'm in the NANDO website. I check the country, which is France. This is the list. I get a list of the accredited test bodies in that country. Click on the one that I'm interested in, which is this one. Okay. And this is what pops up. It's a kind of a PDF printout of all the standards that this test body is accredited for. Now, in this case, it was enormous. There was 2 or 3 pages, but we were able to find out whether the standard that's on our certificate is covered under that list, and it is. So that means we're halfway there at least to being able to use this certificate, right? So this PDF, it's a download. You can use it, you can keep it in your records. You can download it and keep it in your records to back up your decision to accept the cert. So click on the company and the list of standards and testing bodies accredited for is shown. In this case, the standard 10077-1 and 2 does not appear on the list, which is the standard that they were shown. So CSTP is accredited to EN 14351, which is current and references with EN 10077-1, and it is also in the DEAP manual, page 74. So this standard covers the other two standards, and that's actually stated in the DEAP manual. It's referred to in the DEAP manual. So we're happy. The conclusion, therefore, is the door certificate can be used. Okay, so just to review that, maybe to summarize what we said there. So we have a test certificate we received. It's in English, or if it's in English, we're fine. If it's not in English, certificate not in English or certified translation not available, so then we have to use defaults, or we have to go back to the manufacturer and get further information. Check certificate is current. How do we do that? We can check the website of the issuing body to see if it's current. Product type is correct and data required is on it. So the product type is whatever we're looking at. If it's a window, is it the window that's in the dwelling? And can we prove that? That's where we're going to the next stage there, supporting evidence. Can we prove that the product we're looking at in the cert is the product that we're actually is in the dwelling? Okay, so the certificate is current, the product type is correct, and the data required is on it. If it's not, then we have to get further information. If it is, we then check whether we have the valid evidence as per the DEAP survey guide to use that certificate. Again, just to repeat, that we can prove that the certificate is the cert for the door or window or whatever we're looking at in the dwelling. So if we're happy, then we can move on to the next stage. So we just check the standard is current, as we've done, say, in the previous certificate there that we just looked at. Current standard used on certificate as per DEAP manual. If it's not, then we can maybe just cross-check the standard, or cross-check the contents of the standard to see if it's relevant to the particular information that we're looking for, or the particular property that we're looking for. If it's windows, it could be U value and solar transmittance. If it's a door, it's the U value. If it's insulation, it could be thermal conductivity. Okay. Now, if we're not happy with that, we may have to go back to the manufacturer or use defaults. If we're happy, we've checked everything, we checked that the standard is relevant, then we just go back to NANDO to confirm the laboratory is accredited for that test standard. If it's not, then we have to use defaults or get further information. If it is, then the certificate can be used in DEAP. It looks like a little bit of a long drawn-out process, but I think that once you get into using the NANDO website, it's very efficient, very quick. You can check. You can check for any laboratory all over Europe, and it's exactly the same process for each one. Okay, we're just going to have a quick look at CE marked literature. In the DEAP manual, it says performance data on CE marked literature is acceptable provided that the literature refers to the relevant test performance standard. So I've just provided an example there. This is CE marked data sheet for PV solar panel. Okay, so it's CE marked. I know it's difficult to read there, but it has IEC 61215. That's a standard that's in the DEAP manual that we have to look for. So we can use the data that's on that particular document. So the type of literature that we were talking about is we had CE marking is brochures are acceptable, manuals, data sheets, like this typical example here, and product plates. Now there is one example where either a CE mark or the relevant standard will suffice. This is the capacity of domestic hot water tanks in litres. And that's just one exception that I've seen there in the manual. And you can see that in table 2A, note C of the DEAP manual. Excuse me. Now, agreement certificates, what are they? Technical certification for new and innovative products and processes in building and materials technology based on a technical assessment specification. In Ireland, agreement certificates are published in accordance with the Irish Building Regulations and rules of the European Union of Agreement Institutes for Construction. NSAI agreement are responsible for agreement assessment and certification in Ireland. So there's a list of bodies responsible for the agreement certification in other member countries, and they're available on that website there. And in the UK, it's the British Board of Agreement. So criteria for using agreement certificates in DEAP. Certificate must be up to date. How do you check it that it's up to date? You just go on the website. If you have the number, you can check they have an agreement search button there. So you check it, you see if it's up to date, and sometimes they're not even there, so they might have been withdrawn or whatever. So you have to, it's just part of the process. You just have to check. Either check the conditions of certification on the certificate or the issuer's website to make sure the certificate is still valid. The certificate must clearly be related to the actual product in question. Now this comes up time and time again. You have a certificate, but you must be able to prove, as per the methodology in the DEAP survey guide, that that certificate relates to the product that you are interested in. The window, the door, the tank, whatever it is, you must be able to prove it as per the DEAP survey guide. The certificate must contain the required certified data for entry into DEAP. The correct term standard is being used is another condition. Now, I've just put this in as well. This is WEP. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. This is the Window Energy Performance Scheme, and it's run by NSAI. It's very handy. They have a list of windows that they have certified, and they contain exactly the information that we will be looking for windows, which is the U value and the G perpendicular or solar transmittance factor. So it's just a handy one. If you're presented with a cert like this by a supplier, and we can prove, as I've said before, that the window is the window we're looking at, then this cert is perfectly acceptable. You can check it on the actual website yourself. It's very easy to just check whether it's valid or hasn't been withdrawn. There's also certification schemes for people, such as air tightness testers or thermal modelers. SEI require air tightness testers to be certified under the scheme or similar approved, such as INAB, to carry out air tightness testing on dwellings. In the NSAI scheme, the air tightness testers' names are published and can be checked on the NSAI website, which is there. Then the thermal modeling, it's again the same kind of requirements. So engage thermal modeling calculations for dwellings to be certified under the NSAI modeler scheme or similar approved. In the NSAI scheme, the thermal modelers' names are published and can be checked again on the NSAI website. So if you receive an air tightness test, after you've done the other checks, you've checked that say the floor area is correct and all the data you require is on it, you just have to check that the person that did the test is registered, okay, as per the SEI requirements, and the same with thermal modeling, if you get thermal modeling information. So self-declaration literature is another source of certified data. Self-declaration literature from manufacturer referencing the Eco-Design Directive, efficiency and relevant test performance standard where applicable in DEAP guidance. That's on page 10 of the manual. So I'm just taking an example here. For example, heat pumps where Eco-Design data is incomplete. SEI accept the following declared values due to documents from the manufacturer on their printed letterhead. List the model in question and the relevant Eco-Design Directive and EN 16147 to test data for the following areas. So that's the reference hot water temperature, capacity of heat pump, volume of domestic hot water for counted for in the test, and standby heat loss. So I've only seen one manufacturer that has had to use this. Most of the guys, the heat pump manufacturers, all the Eco-Design data is in one document. But I have seen this, and I just thought I'd bring it to your attention. ERP labels, energy-related product labels, are also another example of this sort of type of certification, and we'll have a look at an example of that in a future slide. So looking at supporting evidence for certification, we're looking at particularly plans and specifications, as-built plans and specifications. So I've just had a look at the survey guide. I thought I'd just go through this in a little bit of detail, just to make sure everybody's clear on what the requirements are. So we have plans and specifications. It usually covers items which we can't see, we can't check, we can't do our own physical check on site, such as underfloor insulation, insulation in cavities, insulation in slope ceilings. So building element or system not observable. Okay, we can't see it, we can't check it, we can't measure it. And reliant on specifications and drawings. So we're relying on the specifications and drawings. Check as-built specification. Drawing includes the dwelling address, So we nail that down first of all. The dwelling address, we're not talking about, we have to be 100% clear on what dwelling we're talking about, and the relevant data for DEAP entry is there. So if we're talking about insulation, we may refer to the thickness of the insulation. We may refer to a NSAI search that will tell us the thermal conductivity of that insulation. The role of the person in the project who signs the documentation must be clear. Okay, so for new dwellings and existing dwellings, extensions, documentation must be signed off as built by architect, engineer, or assigned certifier. If there's no building professional involved, then progress photos, invoices can be used. So for existing dwelling refurbishment, where drawing specifications available the same as new builds. So it's the same for an existing dwelling refurbishment where drawing specifications available, the new builds as the same as new builds. Where not available, declaration of works can be used. A contractor can report on letter, headed paper, and or invoices can be used. Okay, so there's a slight difference there. Now, for provisional ratings, actually there isn't much of a difference. Design drawing specifications for the proposed dwelling must be signed off by at least one of the following for the dwelling in question. It's the architect, engineer, developer, builder, contractor, or the BER assessor client, which would be particularly important for one-off buildings. Okay, so there's a slightly enlarged scope of people that can sign off on it. The assessor may use generic insulation thermal conductivities from Table 12B DEAP manual to determine elemental U values. Okay, that's a big change. We can't use it for new builds, but for provisionals, if we're not 100% clear, we're not using a specific product, yeah, we can use generic and use these use the values from Table 12B. Now, an air permeability design value may also be used as described in page 12 of the DEAP manual, 0.25 for without balanced mechanical ventilation and 0.15 with balanced mechanical ventilation. It can also be based on via a permeability test for a similar building as described in the manual there. That's on page 12. Okay. Now, I just did a kind of an as-built specification. They're just an example of what we would be looking for in an as-built specification. It's headed paper. This is an architectural practice. As-built specification is stated on it. It gives me all the details of the particular items I'm interested. The doors, the windows, the roof, the walls, the floor. Okay. Now you can expand that list if there's other items that would be of interest, but that's a basic list there for those kind of items. So exact specification of insulation, including thicknesses, types, test certificate number, is included. So it's also signed off by the particular architect who's the project architect in charge. Okay, so that's kind of an example there of what we'll be looking for there. But the one thing I want to bring to your attention is that supporting evidence for certification, the actual data observed on site takes precedence. So you get a certificate, even if it's the as-built signed off, meets all the criteria that we're talking about. If they say there's 400 millimeters of insulation on the roof and there's only 200, then obviously you take the actual data observed takes precedence. This can be recorded by the assessor using photographs, DEAP survey form, bills, invoices, receipts, etc. All must be clear and legible and clearly connected with the dwelling. When the data item is not observable, it should be detailed using documentary evidence. And that's just what we were talking about there earlier, the as-built specification. When data item is not observable or via documentary evidence, then default is used. Okay. Quotations, tender documentation, and for review drawing specifications are not acceptable as supporting evidence. Okay, we're looking for what was there. We're not for what was discussed prior to the construction, pre-tender, all that stuff, or quotations. They're not acceptable. Okay, I just want to have a quick talk about the Brexit implications. We kind of touched on it already when we were talking about the PCDB database there, the UK version of HARP. When we talked about any of, it just says here, third-party certification using UK-based notified bodies for hot water boilers fired with liquid or gaseous fuels will not be recognised post-Brexit. We've kind of said that already in the previous slides. CE marking by UK notified bodies is no longer recognised in the EU. BER assessors are required to ensure that non-default data entry into DEAP is from a source that is CE conforming using recognised notified bodies situated in the EEA where required. That's European Economic Area. Okay. Now, there's also a note there on CE marking will not be recognised in the UK but after the end of the year. Now, 2-year transition period. UCAS is the UK National Accreditation Board. Now, they've been recognised up to, I think it's the 31st of January next year, right? Now, this has implications for assessors that are doing maybe provisional BERs on buildings at the moment, for example, right? So UCAS may no longer be recognised member of the EEA. This may impact, for example, final BERs for certification used in provisional or design stage BERs may no longer be relied upon for the final BER if published after the 31st of January 2022. Assessors are asked to advise their clients of this, okay? So it's important, particularly now, we're just kind of coming up to that date. We're in October now. 21, so it's only a couple of months away before this situation may become an issue. Non-default data sources from the British Fenestration Council, okay, BBA, British Board of Agreements certificates, heat test guide for stoves are not subject to the Construction Products Regulation. SEI will continue to recognise thermal performance certified data from these sources for the purposes of BER assessments. I just kind of did a little bit of a, sorry there. I've just done a summary of the implications. HARP database, no change. PCDB, new boilers placed on the market following the 31st of December last year. Can't use it anymore. Nothing else has changed on that for the moment. That's the only issue. So new body boilers placed on the market following the 31st of 12. We cannot use the PCDB. We can use the HARP, but we can't use the PCDB. BBA certs, that's British Board of Agreement certs, that's fine. BFRC, that's British Fenestration Council certs, that's fine. Heat test guide, we can use all those for the foreseeable future. If there's a change, SEI will bring it to your attention. Okay, finally, now we're on the audit examples for certification. So we're just having a look at certification timelines. The following are examples from audits carried out over a number of years. The certification displayed were current at the time of the audit process. The publication of European standards is a dynamic process and they are regularly updated and revised over the years. The onus is on the assessor to make sure that when a product is manufactured, installed, the certification is tested to the current standard. Okay, now in the following slides, there are 3 certification examples of solid fuel room heaters for European standards, EN 13240 and EN 13229. Were current. However, since the 7th of September 2018, these standards have been superseded by EN 16510. Therefore, any efficiency certificate for a solid fuel heater manufactured after that date needs to be tested to the new standard to be entered in DEAP. Now that's actually just, it's in the DEAP manual. They have actually updated that for EN 16510. The status of a standard, whether it's current or superseded, can be checked on the NSA or British Standards Institute website, as we discussed earlier. It should be noted that a laboratory status also is being constantly updated on the NANDO website as the new standards are developed. For example, NSAI body number 0050 is on its 9th version since 2006. Okay, all the previous versions of the NSAI status are available to assessors as a download. Now, this is the first example here. This is a British Council, Fenestration Council certificate for a passive triple glazed window. It has all the data that we're looking for. It has the U value for the window. It has the G perpendicular. Now, if it didn't have that information, if it didn't have the solar transmittance value, then we would be able to derive it from the formula in the manual there. So 0.4 is the G window. So we divide it by 0.9 and then 0.7, which is the frame factor, to get 0.63. Now, in this particular example, we get the same value. But if we didn't get that, what I'd say is that the certified value is the one that takes precedence. So I'm just going to go through this. This is an example of British Council Fenestration cert for a triple glazed window. The performance data is acceptable for input into DEAP 4. The type of windows has to be confirmed in writing by the installer builder to make sure it matches the certificate. That is the same with all certification. We all need to look at our DEAP survey guide to make sure that we have the correct evidence for to confirm that the certificate matches the particular item that we're looking at in a dwelling, be it windows, doors, whatever. the number of openings in the window sketch does not have to match the windows on site. Just thought I'd bring that up because actually it shows, I think it just shows one opening sash there, but it doesn't matter. That is not something that we're concerned about. Okay, so the U value of the window, the solar transmittance, are the data into DEAP software. And as I said, if G perpendicular is not available, then it can be derived from G window. Okay, but as I said, it's the certified value that would take precedence in that if we had both options. Now this is another look at window certification. This is a CE marked plate on a window. So if I was doing a survey, I would take a photograph of that plate straight away because it gives me a lot of information. It gives me the actual product code for the window. It's CE marked, and it also, I know it's difficult to read there, but it also gives me the product code and the harmonized standard EN 14531. Now that's a standard that is quoted in the DEAP manual, so we can use it. This tag on its own does not give us the information we require to enter because it doesn't give me the thermal conductivity, or the U value, shall we say, and it doesn't give me the solar transmittance. But in this case, we can download from the Velux WIDSAP the associated declaration of performance, which lists the product data we are looking for. And that particular declaration of performance looks like that. This document shows the product code, which matches the window on site, the relevant harmonized standard, which cross-references EN 10077-2 and EN 410, is included for the information we require, which is the U value and the solar factor. And that's just that's actually in the DEAP manual. This standard is current as per the BSI shop website, so the data can be used. The data we require to input into DEAP is G window, or sorry, the U value window, and the G perpendicular there, 0.52. Now the only thing about this is that it is a window. It's a roof window, so we have to tick the box in the DEAP4 for a roof window. So you need, just remember to check that box. Okay. Now just have another look at an example here. I just thought I'd put this in. This is just a different, it's a CE mark plate. It's a energy efficiency index is on it. So if I was doing my site survey and I found this was available, I would take a photograph of it, and that would be sufficient evidence for me to use. It's useful because it can reduce the energy consumption, or we can claim a better energy consumption for the central heating pump, and that may be important maybe for compliance for a new build. So where a pump has an energy efficient index, EEI, value displayed on the pump's nameplate or technical data sheet as required by EU Commission Regulation 641/2009, the EAM or electric energy efficiency index may be used for standalone or integrated pumps. The annual electricity consumption then for a heat pump controlled by a room thermostat is 130/0.2. So there's a huge reduction there, a huge reduction down to 26 kilowatt hours per year. And for a pump that is not controlled by a thermostat, it's 169/0.2. That's 33.8. Still a big reduction. So what do we need? We just need to take a picture. Take a picture of that. It's CE marked, we have the EEI index, and that's enough. Okay, we go back to ERP labels, that's energy related products. This is a tank. I've taken a photograph of this particular label because it tells me two things that are of interest. It tells me the volume and it tells me the standby heat loss. Now, it also has the references, the regulation 812/2013, so we can use it. We can use it. And we have the actual particular type of tank written up there. All right, model of tank. So it's not quite for the standby heat loss. Is not quite we can't put it in. We have to change it. So we just change it by 83 multiplied by 24. That's 24 hours a day divided by 1,000, and we get the 1.992. That's the input we put into DEAP. Okay. Next example. Or sorry, these are actually the energy regulations on energy label and eco design requirements. I'm not going to go through them. They're actually in the, I think, in the previous heat pump slides, but it's just a question of having a quick look through them for yourselves, and see if, when they come up, you know what you're looking at. Now this is a tank label. This data on this label shows the model, capacity, declared heat loss, etc. While it contains a lot of useful information, it is not CE marked and does not have any relevant standards. Note ERP is written on the label, but is not in the correct format and does not reference the EU regulation. It therefore cannot be used on its own as supporting evidence for DEAP. It can be used as a starting point to see if other certified data can be sourced for this model of tank. So basically it only tells you the model of tank. We can't use the information on it. Okay. Now another example here is an example of a stove. This plate was mounted on a closed room heater. Now it can be used for DEAP entry because it's CE marked. It has the relevant standard now. As I said, this standard is gone out of date, but it was relevant at the time. It tells me the model of the tank of the closed room heater. It gives me the net efficiency of the stove, and it tells me that the fuel is wood. The efficiency of 76.4% is a net value as per guidance in Table E3 DEAP manual, and the fuel is wood. When entering into DEAP, the net efficiency must be changed to gross using the factor from Table E4 Appendix E DEAP manual. So the calculation looks like that. Okay. So we don't need anything else. We just need to take a picture of that plate, and that's enough evidence to back up our efficiency. That's all we need. Now there's another example. This was interesting because there was two fuels. There was wood, 72.4%, and there was manufactured smokes as fuel at 69.1%. So I thought I'd just stick it in there just to show you how to deal with that. It's CE marked, has the relevant standard. Okay, so we're good to go. We don't need any more information. We take a picture of it, and then in order to get the value we require for a solid multi-fuel stove, we take an average of the two efficiencies, 72.4 added to 69.1, take an average, and we multiply 0.94, which is the factor to change from net to gross for multi-fuel. And that comes from Table E4. Okay, and I'm just giving you a reference there for the DEAP manual for that. Okay, so that's another useful plate. Now this is a document that was supplied. It's the EC Declaration of Conformity, right? So this is, it gives the product name, it gives the correct standard, it gives the net efficiency, and it gives the notified body number 1625 and the laboratory name. This certification is dated June 2013. The standards quoted were current at the time the certificate was published and the product installed. The laboratory NB 1625 was authorized to test the appliance to these standards as per the NANDO website. In this case, the fuel is wood and the gross efficiency is entered in DEAP, is calculated as follows. Now, I would also like to point out that the actual product itself, the closed room heater, should also be CE marked to cover you, right? It has to be CE, there has to be a CE mark. Okay, so that has to be, just to be made clear, you have to have a CE mark or have a data sheet with a CE mark on it to use this particular declaration of conformity. Now, I thought I'd have a look at this particular plate. This is interesting, and it just comes back to the whole business that it being a dynamic process. Standards change. You have to keep up to date with them. So in this particular example, this was the back of an indoor unit for a heat pump. The standard EN 12897, which is a perfectly good standard, it's in the DEAP manual, was withdrawn on the 30th of June 2016 and replaced by EN 12897. Okay, 2016. 3 years before this unit was produced in 2019. So hence the standing heat loss, 1.35 kilowatt hours per 24 hours, and volume cannot be used. Okay, that's just, maybe it's just a little bit carelessness on the side of the manufacturer. It's a CE mark plate. It has this a standard, but it's just out of date. And from our point of view, we just cannot use the data that's on it. Okay, so you may probably have to go back to the manufacturer to get updated information on that particular unit. Okay, that's the last of the examples. I've run a tiny bit over there on time, but I hope there's enough time there for any questions. And just at this moment, I'll just hand back to Stephen there to, if there's any questions there that have come up. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation and that you have found it useful. Thanks very much. Hello,
Well,
Steve.
thanks very much, Tom. Yeah. Yeah, that was great. Very informative on the documentation, and I suppose helping assessors run through the processes of when they get a document on how to identify, first of all, is it usable, is it acceptable, is it kosher? I suppose that's the main thing about all certification, is like any documents out there really, I suppose paper doesn't refuse ink, and we just have to be sure that it can be used, it does what it says on the tin, and it is from the correct source. Part and parcel of that, a lot of the documents that we receive into the help desk, questions on documentation, Tom, you touched off on some of them. The DOP was one of them there, and we had a question in with regard to requirements within the DOP. The DOP, yeah, is a declaration of performance, and as by virtue, it does require a CE mark. It's like, I suppose, if we can break down certification, generally speaking, is it from an accredited test center or not? If it is from an accredited test center, does it have the test standard that have the value that we can use on it? And if so, then that can be used. If it's another document that isn't from an accredited test center, well, then how can we use it? And we can use it if there is a CE mark on it, the relevant test standard applicable to what we're looking for, and the relevant value. There's a number of questions in there. There was one about the INAB directory. I see that they've kind of updated their website. So what we would do with assessors, we will come back with that there was a listing of INAB registered air tightness testers, but we will look into that. I'm sure we do already have it at a help desk level, and we will send it out to you, the link to check. If not, we'll be in touch with them and see if we can get a link for assessors to access to ensure certified air testers registered. Pat, do you have any questions there that you've seen in the listings?
There's a number of questions there, Stephen, going back again to sources of information. One related there to tender documents. Again, I suppose we refer to the survey guide, section 4.1.2. It gives you the list of the people that are allowed to sign off on the documentations. It will be the same, the tender documents are normally, the same as you use for provisional. So if they're signed off by an architect, engineer, developer, or the BER assessors client, those are acceptable. And again, when you're checking the specifications, you will go through the same procedures as Tom outlined there, just to check the standards and ensure that they're in compliance with the DEAP requirements. Similarly, with the existing. Sorry, Stephen. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, in the technical document that we have there in section 3.1.3, it outlines sign-off construction drawings for new build finals, existing dwellings, and new build provisionals. There is slight differences there, so just have a read through that, and for assessors to just read through that and see, because not always is information is acceptable at provisional level then acceptable at the new final level. So it's just something to be aware of. Have a read through that. Sorry, Patrick. There.
Yeah. Similarly, there's a question there in relation to renovation retrofitting. Along the same vein there, sometimes the specifications drawings may not be available. But where they're supported by the declaration of works, the DOWs assigned by the contractor, they can be used for substantiating evidence for thickness, for example, for thickness of insulation, and the area of insulation installed. But as Tom said in his presentation, the quotations are not acceptable supporting evidence. Just be careful with that one.
Marish, is there any there that you need to?
Yes, we have one there regarding Joe Blog's builder letter. To get that level of detail from a regular builder is utopian without an assessor helping them. Is it acceptable? Is that acceptable? And if not, why not? Well, for a new final, it is either the architect, engineer, or assigned certifier. The builder cannot sign off on a new final, but for a provisional he can. And there's nothing wrong with an assessor giving the information to the builder that he requires. And at the end of the day, the builder will be signing off on it, that the insulation is X, Y, and Z, and that's perfectly fine, provided the specification is signed off and that it is accurate. So there's no issue with telling him what you require and the way and the format that you require it in. there's no issue at all with that. There's another one there on the stoves in relation to if you've got a plate on a stove, do you require any other documentation? If the plate is CE marked and it has the standard and the performance data, that's all you require. Simple as. You don't need any more paperwork to back that up. Once you have a photograph of the plate on the stove, that's plenty.
Yeah, there was a question that came in earlier there that I know Tom has covered this off, but was with regards to the HARP database. Does it list the same boilers as the UK SAP database? Well, they've always differed. There's been different models out there. I want to point assessors to just be aware of the Brexit guidance that's there with regards to the usage of the dates of the two different databases. But generally speaking, they have differed in the past. Sometimes you wouldn't have a model on HARP and you could find it within the PCDB. So yeah, they are two different. It depends on manufacturers what they want to register on a particular databases. So it's a manufacturer's call on what models they actually register on those databases. So Tom, have you anything further to add here?
I don't think so, Stephen. I think covered as much as I.
There are a few queries in there. We will be getting out some more in-depth detailed answers. There are a few there that will require, I suppose, a bit more meat on the bone, so to speak. But we will be sending out all the questions that we have received. Then we will be putting in a PDF, sending out to assessors along with the links for the webinar and the slides. Just to point out, the next webinar that we have coming up will be on, it's the third in this documentary evidence series. It'll be on thermal bridging. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions in on that when that happens, but it's specific just to thermal bridging. So hopefully that'll be an interesting one for assessors and to assist and help in understanding the requirements, the dynamics of thermal bridging. And Colin Bulger will be giving that webinar. That'll be in December. We'll be sending out invites to that, to assessors for that. If you have any follow-up questions, by all means, send them in to the help desk. As always, we do understand the complexity of certification, and we do understand assessors' needs to sometimes verify if they are unable to verify if something can be used or not. So although this webinar is here to help assess, to assist assessors, to give them the skill set to be able to determine the source of a document and if it's usable, again, if in doubt, contact us and we can further verify on some documentation. Okay, so if there's no more, the panel have anything further to add, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it's been of use that I found it very useful in covering some of the areas that we do receive a lot of queries on at the help desk level. Yeah, there's a note there. Stephen, do you see the storm that's on its way? Many thanks. Yeah, listen, look, we're used to fighting back storms in here as our assessors out in the trade. So listen, look, we're all in this together. We all want to try and get the easiest way to get the assessment and done correctly and properly for people. So yeah, I suppose we all have to be logical as well in our approach to everything. And that entails also the use of the help desk as well, I suppose, in fairness to them. So thank you very much today, and we look forward to seeing you in December for our thermal bridging webinar. Okay, thanks very much to Tom for presenting today, and thanks for our panel today as well. So goodbye, take care.